What happens when a talk show host who thinks she's the smartest person in every room picks a fight with a Southern comedian who has spent decades learning how to handle hecklers with smile? What you're about to witness is one of the most satisfying reversals ever captured on daytime television. The moment when Joy Behar decided to mock Leanne Morgan's small-town roots and discovered that Southern charm can be deadlier than any New York attitude. The studio didn't just go silent. It erupted with laughter at all the wrong moments. And for the first time in View history, it wasn't the guest who walked off the stage. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, you're going to want to talk about this one. The morning had started with the usual energy at the View studios, though there was a different kind of anticipation in the air. Leanne Morgan was coming on the show, and while she wasn't a traditional Hollywood celebrity, her recent Netflix special had broken records, and her tours were selling out arenas across the country. At 58 years old, Leanne had become one of the most successful comedians in America, a woman who had spent decades perfecting her craft in small clubs and church basement before finally getting her big break. Leanne arrived at the studio with the same warmth that had made her famous. She hugged the security guards, complimented the makeup artists on their work, and spent 20 minutes chatting with a young production assistant about her grandmother's biscuit recipe. This was who Leanne Morgan was, a woman who had never forgotten where she came from, and who treated everyone she met like a neighbor stopping by for sweet tea. The studio lights were warm as Leanne took her seat at the famous table. Leanne greeted each host with genuine enthusiasm, her Tennessee accent filling the studio with warmth. "Oh my goodness, I am just so excited to be here," Leanne said, her smile lighting up the space. "I've been watching the show since my kids were in diapers, and now here I am sitting at this table. My mama is not going to believe this." The audience responded warmly to her genuine excitement. There was something refreshing about a guest who wasn't trying to be cool or sophisticated, who was simply happy to be there. Whoopi Goldberg opened the segment with genuine warmth. Our next guest has taken the comedy world by storm. Her Netflix special broke records. Her tours sell out in minutes, and she's been called the funniest woman in America. Please welcome Leanne Morgan. The applause was enthusiastic, and Leanne waved to the audience with a kind of genuine appreciation that couldn't be faked. "Y'all are too sweet. Thank you so much. I feel like I'm at a family reunion, except nobody's asked me why I'm still single yet." She paused. "Oh, wait, I'm married. I always forget that part. 33 years, and honestly, some days I still forget his name. I just call him Hay and hope for the best." The audience laughed warmly. This was classic Leanne Morgan, self-deprecating and relatable. Sarah Haynes asked about her journey to success, and Leanne told her story with the kind of practiced ease that came from years of turning her life into comedy. She talked about raising 3 kids, about performing at small venues for decades, about finally getting her Netflix special at an age when most comedians had either made it or given up. "I always tell people, I'm proof that it's never too late," Leanne said. "I was doing comedy in church basement and Rotary Club luncheons, while other comedians were on TV. But you know what? Those church ladies taught me more about comedy than any club in New York ever could. Because if you can make a Baptist woman laugh about menopause, you can make anybody laugh about anything." The audience was charmed. Even Whoopi was nodding appreciatively. But Joy Behar had been sitting with that familiar smirk on her face, and now she decided to pounce. "So, Leanne," Joy began, her voice dripping with condescension that she barely tried to hide, "your comedy is very regional, isn't it? It's all about Walmart and casseroles and small-town life. Don't you think that's a bit limiting? I mean, real comedy is supposed to challenge people, make them think. What you do is more like comfort food humor for people who don't want to be challenged." The question was clearly designed to diminish, to put Leanne in her place. But if Joy expected the Southern comedian to wilt under the criticism, she had fundamentally misunderstood who she was dealing with. Leanne's smile didn't waver for a second. "Well, Joy, I appreciate you asking that. You know, my mama always said that some people are so smart they've educated themselves right out of common sense. I'm not sure what that means, but I think about it every time someone tells me my comedy isn't sophisticated enough." The audience laughed, and Joy's expression tightened slightly. "But to answer your question," Leanne continued, her voice as sweet as honey, I think the most challenging thing a comedian can do is find the universal and the specific. When I talk about Walmart, I'm really talking about community. When I talk about casseroles, I'm really talking about how women show love. When I talk about small town life, I'm talking about the human experience that most people actually live, not the version they see on TV shows made by people who've never been west of the Hudson River. The observation was delivered with such warmth that it took a moment for the sharpness of it to land. Joy's smile became fixed. That's a nice way of spinning it, Joy replied. But let's be honest, your audience is mostly middle America, right? People who voted a certain way, who believe certain things. Don't you ever feel like you're just preaching to the choir, telling people what they want to hear instead of challenging their assumptions? The implication was clear, and the studio atmosphere shifted. Leanne tilted her head slightly, that sweet smile still firmly in place. Joy, honey, I've been doing comedy for 30 years. I perform for every kind of audience you can imagine. And you know what I've learned? People are a lot more alike than they're different. The woman in Manhattan who's trying to raise kids while working full-time has more in common with the woman in Tennessee doing the same thing than either of them would probably admit. My job isn't to divide people into teams. It's to remind them that we're all just trying to get through the day without losing our minds. She leaned forward slightly, her voice still warm but with a new edge to it. Now, I don't know what kind of comedy you did back in the day, Joy, but I do know that the best comedy brings people together. It doesn't make them feel stupid for where they live, or how they vote, or what they believe. Maybe that's not sophisticated enough for some folks, but my sold-out arena suggests that a whole lot of people are hungry for comedy that doesn't make them feel bad about themselves. The counter was so smooth, so perfectly delivered that the audience burst into applause. Joy's face reamed. I'm just saying that there's a difference between popular and good. Joy shot back. McDonald's is popular too, but nobody's calling it fine dining. Leanne laughed, a genuine, delighted laugh that filled the studio. Joy, did you just compare my comedy to McDonald's? Honey, I've been called worse by better. My mother-in-law once told me my brisket tasted like a tire fire, and she said it right in front of Jesus and everybody at Easter dinner. You're going to have to try harder than fast food comparisons if you want to hurt my feelings. The audience roared with laughter. Joy was clearly not used to having her attacks deflected so easily. Besides, Leanne continued, I think there's something real condescending about assuming that middle America doesn't deserve comedy that speaks to their lives. Like somehow their experiences are less valid, less worthy of being reflected on stage. I've met a lot of people who think they're smarter than everyone else. And you know what they usually have in common? They've never had to actually live with the people they look down on. Joy's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting I look down on people? Leanne's smile was beatific. Oh, honey, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm a comedian, not a therapist. But I will say this. In my experience, people who feel the need to tell everyone how sophisticated they usually aren't as secure in that sophistication as they like people to believe. The observation landed like a precision-guided missile. Joy's composure was visibly cracking. You know what I find interesting, Joy? Leanne continued, her voice still carrying that honeyed southern warmth. You spent this whole interview trying to make me feel small, trying to make me admit that my comedy isn't as good as whatever you think real comedy is. But here's the thing about us simple country folks. We know when someone's trying to put us down, and we've had a lot of practice smiling right through it. She turned to address the audience directly. My mama taught me that you can say almost anything to anyone as long as you smile while you say it and add bless your heart at the end. So, Joy, bless your heart for thinking that making fun of where I come from was going to rattle me. I've been handling hecklers since before you got this job. And honey, I've handled better hecklers than you in bars where the bathroom didn't even have a door. The audience exploded with laughter and applause. Joy looked like she had swallowed something unpleasant. This is ridiculous, Joy said, her voice rising. I'm trying to have a serious conversation about comedy, and you're just deflecting with folksy charm. Am I deflecting, or am I just not giving you the reaction you wanted? Leanne asked, her voice still perfectly pleasant. Because it seems to me like you came into this interview expecting me to be some simple country bumpkin who would crumble under your big city wit. And now that I'm not crumbling, you're getting frustrated. That's not my problem. Joy, that's yours. Whoopi tried to intervene. Maybe we should talk about Leanne's tour dates, but Joy wasn't ready to let it go. I just think it's worth pointing out that there's a difference between being popular and being important. Some comedy actually changes the world. What does your comedy change? Leanne nodded thoughtfully as if she was really considering the question. You know, that's a fair question, Joy. What does my comedy change? Well, let me think about that for a second. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had shifted to something more serious beneath the warmth. I got an email last week from a woman in Ohio. She told me that she'd been going through chemotherapy, and the only thing that got her through those treatments was watching my specials. She said I made her laugh on days when she didn't think she could laugh anymore. That's what my comedy changed for her. The studio had gone quiet. Leanne continued. I got a letter from a man in Texas whose wife had just died. He said they used to watch my comedy together, and now he watches it alone because it makes him feel like she's still there laughing with him. That's what my comedy changed for him. Her voice was steady, but there was real emotion beneath it. I met a young woman at a show in Nashville who told me she was thinking about hurting herself, but she came to my show instead because she thought maybe laughing would help. And it did. She got help after that. She's doing okay now. That's what my comedy changed for her. She looked directly at Joy. You want to know what's important, Joy? Those people are important. Their pain is important. Their need to laugh is important. And if my simple, unsophisticated McDonald's comedy can give them 1 hour where they forget about their problems and just laugh, then I'd say that's pretty damn important, wouldn't you? The audience burst into applause that was somehow different from before. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was something real. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Leanne wasn't finished. You know what I've noticed about people who think they're better than everyone else? They usually haven't done the work of actually connecting with people. They sit in their towers and make judgments about what matters and what doesn't. But they've never held the hand of a woman crying in a meet and greet line because your comedy helped her through her divorce. They've never hugged a veteran who said, "Your jokes about marriage reminded him why he was fighting to save his." Her voice was still warm, but it carried a weight now that filled the entire studio. I'm not trying to change the world with my comedy, Joy. I'm trying to help people get through their day. And if you think that's not important, then I feel sorry for you. Because at the end of your life, it's not going to matter how sophisticated people thought you were. It's going to matter how you made them feel. Joy's face had gone through several shades of red during this speech. When she spoke, her voice was tight with barely controlled anger. I don't need a lecture on what matters from someone who makes jokes about menopause and minivans. Leanne laughed, genuinely delighted. Oh, Joy, you still don't get it, do you? The menopause jokes aren't about menopause. They're about women finally reaching an age where they stop caring what people like you think of them. The minivan jokes aren't about minivans. They're about the beautiful chaos of raising a family. Everything I do has meaning underneath it. You just have to be willing to see it. She shook her head with what looked like genuine sympathy. But you can't see it, can you? Because seeing it would mean admitting that the people you spent your career looking down on have rich, meaningful lives that are just as valid as yours. And that's a hard thing to admit when your whole identity is built on being smarter and more sophisticated than everyone else. Joy stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't have to sit here and be psychoanalyzed by a woman who tells jokes about Cracker Barrel. You don't have to do anything, Joy, Leanne replied, her voice as calm and sweet as it had been since the beginning. But I will say this. I've told jokes about Cracker Barrel to sold-out crowds at Madison Square Garden. Where are you performing these days? The question was devastating in its simplicity. Joy's face went pale, then red again. This is absurd. You're being completely unprofessional. I'm being unprofessional. Leanne laughed. Honey, you've spent this entire interview trying to make me feel bad about my success, my audience, and where I come from. All I've done is refuse to feel bad. If that's unprofessional, then I guess I'm guilty as charged. She turned to the audience with a warm smile. Y'all have been so wonderful. This is exactly why I love what I do. Because no matter what anybody says, laughter brings people together. And I'd rather bring people together with simple jokes about everyday life than tear them apart with sophisticated contempt. Joy was visibly shaking now. Whether with anger or embarrassment was hard to tell. "You know what? I'm done with this," Joy said, her voice cracking slightly. "I have better things to do than argue with someone who doesn't understand the difference between pandering and art." She started to walk away from the table, and the studio fell into shocked silence. This wasn't how views were supposed to go. The host wasn't supposed to be the one walking off. "Joy, wait," Leanne called out, her voice still carrying that infuriating warmth. "I want you to know something before you go." Joy paused, turning back with an expression that mixed fury and uncertainty. "I don't have any hard feelings toward you," Leanne said, and somehow it was clear that she meant it. "I've been doing this too long to take criticism personally. But I hope someday you'll understand that there's room in this world for all kinds of comedy. The sophisticated kind that makes people think, and the simple kind that makes people feel. Neither one is better than the other. They're just different." She smiled that famous smile. "And I hope someday you'll stop by one of my shows. I think you might be surprised by what you find. We're not as simple as you think we are. We just don't feel the need to prove how smart we are all the time. That's a Southern thing. We call it grace." Joy stood frozen for a moment, clearly unsure how to respond to kindness after expecting confrontation. Then, without a word, she turned and walked off the set, leaving behind a studio full of people who had just witnessed something unprecedented. Whoopi, for once, seemed at a loss for words. "Well, that was unexpected." Leanne just shrugged, still smiling. "You know what my mama always said? Never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it." She paused. "I'm not calling Joy a pig. Mind you, that would be rude. I'm just saying that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to refuse to fight at all. Just smile, be kind, and let the other person make themselves look bad." She turned to the camera one final time. "To everyone watching at home, thank you for your support. I'll be on tour all year, and I'd love to see you there. We'll laugh together, cry together, and remember that no matter what's going on in the world, we're all just people trying to do our best. That's all any of us can do." The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. They hadn't just watched a celebrity interview. They had watched someone demonstrate that kindness, properly deployed, was the most devastating weapon of all. And they had watched a woman from small-town Tennessee remind everyone that sophistication isn't about where you come from or how you talk. It's about how you treat people when the cameras are rolling and everyone is watching. The aftermath of that interview would dominate entertainment news for weeks. Clips of Leanne's graceful but devastating responses would be shared millions of times. People who had never heard of Leanne Morgan before would discover her comedy and understand immediately why she had connected with so many people. And Joy Behar would become the answer to a trivia question that nobody wanted to win. The first View host to walk off her own show because a guest refused to be bullied. But perhaps the most significant outcome was a conversation it sparked about different kinds of success, different kind of comedy, and different kinds of intelligence. Leanne Morgan had proven that you didn't need to be mean to be funny, that you didn't need to tear people down to build yourself up, and that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is simply refuse to play someone else's game. What do you think about this incredible confrontation? Did Joy Behar get what she deserved, or did Leanne Morgan go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more stories that will absolutely leave you speechless.